come to the show. We about to chop it up. Come to the show. We got some things we can talk about. Chop it up. Chop it, chop it, chop it up. Chop. We got some things we can talk about. Chop it up. Chop it, chop it, chop it up. Chop it up, chop it. We got some things we can talk about. Come to the show. We about to chop it up. Come to the show. We got some things we can talk about. Come to the show. We about to chop it up. Come to the show. We got some things we can talk about. Chop it up. Chop it, chop it, chop it, chop it up. Chop it. We got some things we can talk about. Chop it up. Chop it, chop it, chop it up. Chop it up. Chop it. We got some things we can talk about. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Chop Shop. It's another Tuesday in the neighborhood. I'm your host, Pastor Marvin McKinstry, and as always, I'm riding with my right hand and my left hand. He's my main man, Mr. Shaka Pitts, on the ones and twos, behind the scenes, making the show happen, controlling all the magic, and the brother who I chop it up with on here before anybody else. How you doing today, Shop?
I'm well. Yourself, good brother? It's hot out there, man. It's real. It's do the right thing hot out there, man.
Yeah, hey,
right.
I've been avoiding the heat, man. I gotta go to a homegoing service tomorrow. As always, we are grateful to God to bring us back to the people of Baltimore, to be able to talk about some things that are critical in this time and to the culture. I do want to lift up in prayer my good friend Jason Boogie Wilson. If you know anything about church drumming or dancing, then you might know my man, the Splash Man, Jay Boog. Jay been rocking out with me for the better part of 20 years at our church, and he's a rare commodity. He's a musician in the church that has never been on salary, man, just kind of there because he loved God, and God saw fit to call his mom home. So we definitely keeping his entire family in prayer, his dad, his sister, who has the arduous task of eulogizing her mother, and my good man, one of my best friends, brother Jason J. Captain Boogie Wilson on Facebook. Go over there, shoot him some love and some comfort, some words of comfort. He's a real good man, great father, and I love that brother, man. My heart is broken with him. But tomorrow we gonna pile up in the church. Well, we ain't gonna pile up. I don't know the CDC watching. We gonna go in the church under state social distancing guidelines and regulations and celebrate the life of his great mother. I just wanted to send my man some love, man. Shock, we got some hot topics to chop it up about tonight, man.
Listen, I'm looking forward to it, man. I got some of my self-sustained people on here. Some of my people are interested in that type of lifestyle, and they farm, into farming and things of that nature. And
that's what's up.
So they tuned in, man. And I see
I see you got my man Warren tagged in, Jahidi. The brethren are up on this tagged in. I hope that they have a chance to get on and listen. For everybody tonight, we want your comments in the box. We got two great guests, but we do pay attention to the comments and get what needs to be said from our audience on the air. Now, you might have seen our little disclaimer that the views expressed on the Chop Shop by guests and by our listening audience in the comment section are not that of the Chop Shop, our staff, or sponsors. And we don't say that because we seek to censor, but we like to just chop it up, right? So,
100.
BPS, Baltimore Public Schools made an announcement the other day that they're starting the year virtually, and instead of starting it at the projected date, which was late August, it's now going to be after Labor Day on September the 8th. Shock. I got some real hot, good information. But go ahead, let me hear what you got to say. Because I know you got a special kite sent your way, but just nationally, I know nationally it's like 62%, I think, of the teachers who are like they not trying to go back right now. They trying to wait it out. I saw some doctors talking about the real big thing is some kids, they may not. That kids have died. Don't get it twisted. There have been children that have died from this,
but they're more concerned about children passing it on to family members or to teachers or to food work, no, people who serving food or whoever. So that's really the concern right now. But the pulse around the nation, brother, is over 50% is like, nah, they trying to chill right now. As far as teachers, they trying to chill right now. So what you got?
I got some numbers, right? Since you
got?
You brought up the numbers thing. And
y'all
heard me say it before. We are actively trying to get our school CEO, Dr. Sandalisa, to come on because, again, she has the very large task, gigantic task of making decisions that affect 18,000 students alone, not to mention the families and others that are connected to all the significant others that are connected to our children, right? And sometimes we think we got it figured out, but we want to bring her on so we can be able to hear from her from the perspective of the person that's entrusted to make these big decisions. So let me give you some numbers that came my way, and I look.
What's the math? What's the math? What's the math?
Journalism. I cannot reveal my source, but I was told that surveys went out. We didn't get numbers on how much. And look, Student Minister Carlos is already here in the backstage. Y'all can't see him, but he's laughing. We were told that surveys went out, and we don't have hard numbers on how many people, because we know in Baltimore Public Schools, getting parental participation is tough, right? But this is what we was told. Surveys went out, and 50% of students wanted to return to school, 50% didn't. Talk students, man. Some people, we know from our experience that's the only time they eat. Sometimes that's the only piece they get. You know, from my experience working in the school system in the past, I know what it's like for that young person when that school is his lifeline, it's a distraction from a toxic household. So they say 50-50. 50% of students that were surveyed wanted to come back, 50% didn't. What you think, Shot?
You know what? I want to know with some of the parents think, because we have a parent watching right now who says she filled out the survey. So I want to hear from her. But now I will tell you that I have spoken to kids in my program, right? And only one said he want to go back. And he said and the reason he said is because he learns better in person. So he feels like he's missing out, he's finding it difficult with the virtual thing. So I want to know what the actual, because I'm out that game.
Though, right? Because one of the things I do want us to keep in mind, one of the keen sources that I have that has that's an insider at Baltimore Public Schools also reminded us that our students are already in some cases at a disadvantage and deficit, right? Just from the fall off that takes place while they're out of school over the regular summer break. These kids haven't been to school since March. So particularly in the Black community, we got to be prayerful, because the other people got other resources that our community don't normally have, with tutors, homeschool, and all of that, right? So good
net everywhere.
Right. So the students 50-50. So parents, because Shock want to get the parents.
I was
told by a very good source that parents wind up being a sixth. No, I'm sorry. 50-50 was the parents, not the students. 50-50 was the parents, not the students. Yeah. 50-50 was the parents, not the students.
So I can dig that, though. I can see why.
There's some other challenges that are posed. Everybody is. Some people are essential. They got childcare issues and all that. Now, me personally, I've always been in a position where I've had support and resources, even as a single dad, because I was a single parent, right? Even as a single dad, where I had some plan B, C, D, E, F, G, but that's not everybody's situation.
Mm-hmm. No doubt.
So parents, 50-50. 50% say, yeah, send them back to school. 50%, no, I'm keeping my kids home. The thing I do want all parents to realize is you govern and run your household. If it comes down to a matter of your child's health, you make the final decision. Government say what they say. Now, students were 60% students wanted to stay home, 40% wanted to return to school.
Okay. I can believe that, brother. I can believe that.
Keisha Thomas says she did the survey, Shot. for her two younger two, and they prefer to stay home. Another good friend of mine, Miss Patterson, Lucille, she didn't say what she put in there, but she said she did the survey too.
So Takesha also said her oldest that's in high school prefers to stay home. So that's her whole household. So
okay.
So the question is, how do you feel as a mom? So do you want them to go back, or you want them to stay home? Before we move on, I would like to know that, if possible.
Talk about it. She on it now.
Yeah. So she definitely said the two younger ones prefer to stay home, and the oldest wants to stay home. So yeah, and she says she wants them home.
Okay, Cheryl Charmaine says that her child wants to go back to school because she isn't learning well online.
Yeah.
There's some children that are that are realist when it come down to that. Like, look, I know this part ain't working for me. I know my mentor with college, when I tried to do the online school, I'm like, man, that ain't working. I need somebody I could talk to.
Listen, brother, I'm like that. I need, as far as learning, I like that in person and then hands on. So again, we're all different, and these are the things that needs to be considered by whoever the powers that be, Marv. Whoever those people are, whoever the string pullers are, right? Mm-hmm. They need, the final say is going to be the parents, right? But the string pullers downtown or wherever they sitting, that needs to be considered, brother. Everyone's not the same.
And Lucille said she didn't want to send her kids back to school either. So, what I was told by this very credible source, right, that the thing that tipped the scales towards coming back virtually was the thing that tipped the scales to coming back virtually was 70% of teachers did not want to return to in-school instruction. 30% was cool with it. Talk to me, Shot.
How many's cool with it?
30% was okay with coming back in-person schoschool. 70% was not. Now,
that's like the country, but that's like the country.
Hold on, let me say this real quick before I'm throwing this at you. Because you can leverage their employment, I would believe that the greater participation in the survey wouldn't particularly be with the students or the parents, but it would be with the faculty and the staff. What you got, Shot?
Yeah, I think that's definitely it. But going back to the numbers, that 30% is almost like what's going on in the country. That's like almost the national numbers, right? That's like that 30% who I don't want to generalize, but there's a 30% who's like, the heck with Rona. The 30% who's like, I'm not wearing no mask. The 30% who's like, let's just whatever it is, let's just get back. So I think that's that number is just indicative of what's going on nationally, I think, to be honest, yeah.
Sorry about that. I muted myself. But this, no matter what, right, this is a very interesting dialogue, because one of the other things that came out of that conversation, right, is the reality that now we have to look at the challenges that are posed by the fact that not everybody has the resources to effectively engage online learning. You got so there's a partnership with T-Mobile to do some mobile hotspots as long as they let. I think we need to go ahead and bring the minister on the screen because he's chomping at the bit.
Yeah, I see him. I can see him. I can see him. I can see him. I can see him.
We are not above our guests joining the monologue. If you need to be in it, brother, come on the screen. We still gonna give you a slam bam introduction when the time is right.
All I'm saying is I'm enjoying the commentary. I was good backstage because y'all hitting it, because that's what's going on right now on every level. We dealing with the schools, we dealing with murders, we dealing with so much. We dealing with the Orange Man want to send federal troops. We all over the place right now. So what you giving is the kind of commentary and dialogue and discussion that we need to have. So that's why you see me responding. We want the same team.
The wonderful Miss Ebony Trice says the kids won't get the same level of teaching as before the pandemic. teachers will spend more time trying to teach from behind a mask and having to tell kids to keep their distance and mask on. And listen, this sister right here, she knows something about educating. She knows something about the classroom. She knows something about kids and the school. So when it comes down to it, I ain't even think about that part. You know, they talk about how much of the school day is spent on discipline versus instruction as is, right? How much of the day is now going to be spent on telling Jonathan and Stephen to stop getting too close to each other? I ain't even think about that part of it.
Listen, the brother in charge of the Florida schools, I was peeping him earlier, and he actually said that. He actually said that, like, these things need to be, you have to consider this, man. Like, you know, how, like, for instance, how many adults, I went to Marshall's, like, I'm boycotting Marshall's downtown right now, right? But anyway, I went to Marshall's, and they just willy-nilly, people just walking around, no mask, and these are grown-ups. These are full cognitive grown-ups, you know, who have the ability to make, you know, who's making life or death decisions for other people. They out here just walking around in the department store, and then I tell the managers, 2 managers, and they like, well, what do you want us to do? Like, what? Like, this is ridiculous. So again, these are grown-ups. I'm just giving in context that these are grown-ups, right? So now we expect, you know, 12-year-olds, 10-year-olds, you know, things of that to do this for 8 hours? For 8 hours?
Let's not forget one of the authorities on this from the CDC, right, said that if everybody would just stick with the guidelines for 4 to 6 weeks, we have a realistic chance of stomping Rona out, man. But you see it all over the place. You've seen people who refuse. I'm talking this video out there now with people who refuse to put the mask on and get downright indignant when you challenge them on it.
Oh, yeah. Real talk. And I want to say, man, this COVID thing to our listeners, part of the biggest problem right now is discussing asymptomatic scenarios because of the mortation of COVID, where it wasn't like when we first got started. There's so many that they're reporting that literally have it, right? They're just not showing symptoms. And so the point of the mask is for any of us that may be asymptomatic because we haven't been tested, but we don't have any symptoms, is to make sure that we're not spreading it out in the public. See, everybody worried about catching it. We also got to be concerned about spreading, the potential to spread it. And that's what the officer at the CDC was saying. Look, we could crush this out if we would just follow these procedures. But let's keep it 100. Listen, there is no more going back to normal. Except that if we were in Asia pre-COVID.
How about that?
The culture is when you go out in crowds, you got on a mask. Any of us that have flown a lot, like myself, all day, ain't been on a plane since March, but before that, all over the place, you would notice our Asian brothers and sisters, for the most part, when they are in America, when they're on an airplane, they're masked up. And so I know that this whole freedom of speech, America's a free society. Government can't tell me what to do. But guess what? Everything takes evolution and everything can have new boundaries. Because if we don't, black people, if we don't take it serious and we start behaving recklessly saying, I don't want to put no, and can't nobody tell me to put on a mask, you better think about grandma. You better think about moms. You better think about auntie. You better think about those in your household or you freely moving around, going to cookouts and things like that. Hey, if it means not spreading, if it means saving a life, mask up, brothers and sisters. It's all good.
So in total transparency, I'm going to jump in here because we don't have Dr. Brown on just yet, praying that all is well. But we got this dialogue going with our audience, and we just going to stick with it, praying that Dr. Brown is able to join us. And if not, we just shifting on the fly because we got people here with us, man. The numbers are looking good, and people still contributing to this COVID conversation. My brother, one of my young soldiers, who I watched grow into the man that he is, Brother Christopher Lawrence, great dad, said, I went down to Boston Street to Cold Stone and Outback. Almost no one had on a mask but him and his family, and they felt weird. It felt weird having theirs on.
Look at them numbers down there, though.
Yeah.
Their numbers. See, remember everybody was mocking Park Heights because it was us, or 1-7. Look at Canton.
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
it's off the chain.
Listen,
And look, we got,
And you know we don't live down there.
We got my man Clay Burston, right? Now, Clay, I'm gonna tell you, stay up off here because I'll send you a link and bring you on, brother. You just let me know. Put a comment on there if I can send you a link and bring you in this dialogue. The economic impact of not returning to a full school interaction carries major weight. Think about what he said. The economic impact of not returning to a full school interaction. We don't even think about the ripple effect. Clay, send me a comment right now if I can send you a link, bro. And you want to jump up on here, man, because I love your mind, man. And we gonna stick with this conversation. If we get Dr. Brown, it's cool. If not, we gonna chop it up about this tonight.
So people talk about controlling, right? But how about this? Dr. Brown's coming in. But
yeah,
how about
I see him.
How about this? Remember, I'm old enough, brother Marvin. You're old enough, and brother Muhammad, you're just old enough. You're just old enough, right, to remember seatbelts, right? We remember when seatbelts were not met. It was not law. I remember the buckets. I remember the buckets, four deep in the front. I remember that.
You can smoke in the courthouse. Come on, brother.
This is all I'm saying. So also a lot of this government's not like come on, bro. Like y'all tripping. Either you tripping or you this old, right? Because there will be some hands put on to govern what needs to be governed. And unfortunately, if people are acting the way they are, Minister Muhammad, then yeah, somebody needs to make something happen. Somebody needs to make it happen.
Hold on, Dr. Brown. Let me bring you in on the conversation. We did the formal introductions last week. Y'all know these brothers. I love them. Minister Carlos Muhammad, Dr. Brown, and we are going to talk about what we're supposed to talk about. But I gotta hear from the educator, the doctor himself, the man that's built and planted a school of his own, right? We are talking right now. We opened up in our news segment talking about the impact. Really talking about Baltimore Public Schools' decision to open up virtually and move the date back to September 8th. And we were just kind of talking about the numbers, who was with it, some of our audiences. It just give us a little something on it, Doc. When you hear all of that, because I know you have one of those brains like my brother Clay Burston, that you're thinking about the totality of the impact that this has, both positive and whether you agree or disagree. Talk to me, Doc.
Sure. I think that with the announcement coming yesterday, of course, it has put a lot of people into discussion about what they will do. So I think one of the things that I like to do is think about what the move should or could be that is best for most of our children, for all of our families. And so with the school system going virtual, I started to think immediately about those parents who got a little taste of the home education virtual experience earlier this year, while also trying to keep tabs on their jobs and their other obligations at the very same time. And that was a challenge for many families. And so to go right back into that later this year is going to continue to be a challenge. And so I see a need. I see a need there, and I see an opportunity there for, in our case, our church, to provide space for children, a small number of children, to come together to do their virtual learning on separate computers with headphones in one space with adult supervision, and have parents be able to tend to their responsibilities during the day. And then in those break times when the children are not on the computer, having freedom school experiences as we would be doing anyway. As you said, Brother Marvin, or Pastor Marvin, you said it. Aretas Cross Freedom School, we started 8 years ago with this African-centered educational program. And what we did was we would open up the Freedom School when public school was closed. And so those professional development days, spring break, and even summer camp for a couple of years, we brought them to the church. We transformed the church into a freedom school, and we had our children learning about sewing and learning how to sew. They learned culinary skills. Of course, they learned agricultural skills. We have an herbalist on our team, and so she was teaching herbalism to the young people. And then we would have field trips like going to the grocery store and reading the labels of the food, and then going to study what those ingredients were. We had children calling companies to inquire about the GMO ingredients on their products, and to hear 10, 11, 12-year-olds interrogating these adults on these 1-800 numbers, and the adult on the other end of the phone did not know how to respond. So I just say all that to say that for our grandparents and great-grandparents, they remember a time when church was the school. They remember a time when you would go to the church, one-room schoolhouse or what have you. The teacher is known by the family, known in the community, and education was more of a communal initiative. And it may be time, and it may be right for some of our families to get back into that communal, cooperative mindset and say, listen, they've decided what they're going to do. Let us organize and decide what we're going to do, and even see where the interplay might happen as well. And so we are not powerless. If there's anything I'll conclude with, we are not powerless. These are your children. Act like it. We are not powerless. We organize ourselves. We put our resources together. We look at who does what, who owns what, who knows what, and we can create what we need if what the school system is offering does not fit the needs of your family.
We gonna stay with this dialogue, but I gotta do one thing real quick, and I promise, Minister Carlos, when we do this one thing, it's a must we do it. We gonna come back every week on the Chop Shop. We dedicate our show to one of our ancestors, somebody that made a powerful impact. And on this week, we lost a giant. So we want to take the opportunity, as always, to acknowledge that God chose to call unto himself great civil rights activist, congressman, leader, you name it. He was all of that, Mr. John Lewis. So tonight's episode of the Chop Shop, as we talking about freedom initiatives, we talking about Black leadership and everything that makes us beautiful, we acknowledge the years and years and years as a civil rights activist, all the way into his political prowess as a congressman, our leader, our ancestor, our father figure, Mr. John Lewis, for all of the great contributions that he made to us. We thank God for giving us a time to be able to have such an example as a John Lewis, and we honor God. We are greatly grateful that we've had him, and we believe that God has been pleased with your life. So in that way, we say to you, Mr. John Lewis, our great ancestor, as you transitioned over into the light, we salute you, and we pray that we're able to make your legacy proud as we attempt to live into the opportunities that you opened up for us. Now, coming right back, I know that we had a flyer go out and said we was going to talk about some things, but this the Chop Shop where we let it flow. We got a good audience. We getting good feedback. I want y'all to keep the comments coming because I want to kind of stay with this. One of my sisters, Danelle Austin Pender, who does great work up in the Park Heights community with kids. We got the real ones on here tonight. And she says, I've been making this point for a while. They have been wearing them since the first SARS situation that she talks about our Asian brothers and sisters in their country and how diligent they are. So I'm going to ask y'all this. Look, is it okay that we stay with this pastor and minister?
Fine. I mean, you know, the way this flows, we'll touch whatever the topic was anyway, because one thing for sure, we can't get away from talking to our people about the essentials of life, which is food, clothing, and shelter. And if we are concerned about food, clothing, and shelter, then we must first be concerned about being here to enjoy it and not being reckless in this pandemic by losing our life when we really don't have to, or spreading it to somebody else that that could lose theirs when it does not have to happen. But I want to say this about what you just did for our pioneer and elder, ambassador, statesman, civil rights leader. I mean, the list could go on about our brother John Lewis and brother Vivian, who also returned back to their Lord. When you think of him being the 11-year junior in age to Dr. King, the reality is, though, both of them were very young men involved in a very serious struggle. Though sometimes that imagery can look real old and outdated, man, Dr. King started that mission at 26 years of age in terms of stepping up to leadership. And then John Lewis being 11 years his junior, when he comes into play, you're talking about coming out of his teens into his 20s to get involved. And when he got involved, this is my point, just like Dr. King and many others, may God forever be pleased with the Reverend James Bevel, another one, right? Man, once they got involved in struggle, they never stopped. So the honor that our brother could return to his Lord, a worker, that is something that all of us should want to die the same way in service, never turning back, never giving up, going on with all of the abuses, with all of what he suffered. He never stopped working for the people. I'll leave you with this. Minister Farrakhan was at a hip hop summit in 2003 with all of the major rappers. And our brother Kwaisi and Fume was up there. Now you got to think, go back to 2003. And Kwaisi was talking about retiring. And Minister Farrakhan said there is no retirement in the struggle for the redemption of a people. Our retirement is when we go back into the earth from which we came. So he told him, and you got to think Kwaisi is much younger than the honorable minister.
And he just unretired.
Right. And he's telling him, no, brother, you can't talk about retirement. So I'm just saying, our brother John Lewis and brother Vivian showed us the example that when we signed up for this, it's till death do us part.
So let me throw this at y'all, my good brothers and leaders. We are live on the Chop Shop. We come on every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 p.m. Y'all know the deal. Put some likes and some hearts up in this thing. Make Facebook's algorithm go crazy, because the more you do that, the more people's notifications it pops up in, and the more people get this good information. Dr. Brown, you took me out of here with one thing that you said. You said, even in this, seeing the opportunity. And the reason I say you took me out of here is because I've been preaching this, teaching this. You know, I even preached it from Jeremiah 29, where around about the 4th verse, God said, don't believe the false prophet that told you that you coming out of this. You're going to be here for a while. I'm going to bring you out when I'm ready. But while you're here, that your sons marry and give your daughters into marriage. He said, build and live in what you build. And then he said, plant, and I'm going to give you to eat off of what you plant. There's some activity in this that is opportunistic for our people. I want to hear from y'all as we talk tonight about building community, about the faith community's responsibility to build a nation into itself. And the reason we have Dr. Brown and Minister Carlos on is because their ministries, like many others in Baltimore, have extended way beyond the 4 walls to answering a lot of the issues in the African-American community. So I want to throw that out there. Opportunities in the COVID for African-American faith leaders or Black faith leaders. I'm Black. I don't know about you. For Black faith leaders to be able to do some things and seize the opportunity to build relationships. I want y'all to talk about it from whatever perspective that finds you.
Minister Carlos, can I ask you to go first? I was thinking about this conversation and this question in particular. And of course, I've been deeply inspired and moved by the Nation of Islam with respect to this idea and this structuring of a nation within a nation.
Gotcha.
And when I look at the NOI, it is one of the most glowing examples, in my opinion, of a group that has doesn't just talk nation, but has established itself and established departments and established positions that look like a government. And so can you lead us off there, Minister Carlos? I'd love to hear you just speak on
Sure.
that.
I was going to yield to my brother. But I would say this, you know, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan told us one time, based upon a personal experience in terms of having to build when there's nothing, or where there appears to be nothing, or you don't have the kind of help that you think you need for the big idea. Because, you know, when we got the idea, a lot of times it's very broad, you know, it's huge. But the Honorable Minister said, with that, there's always opposition. See, the bigger you grow, the more opposition that you have. So the concept to building nation first starts with building households. And then from households, the establishment of bonding community. Brother Shaka's putting up some of the nation's achievements, and we'll talk a little about that later. But the minister said that you have to find people in that scenario. Say, i.e., man, our block is not clean. So he said the first thing you got to do, you got to go out there on your front with your broom and dustpan. He said, don't condemn nobody else on the block. Go out there and set the example. And he said, what you'll naturally find are others that they wanted to do it. They just didn't have the inspiration to do it. So now they come out and say, you know what? I'm going to go out there and do mine. But you're always going to have those on the block that don't care, or seem like they don't care. But now, once we grow a little bit, we can inspire by knocking on that door and saying, hey, do you want us to clean up your front? Because if you don't, we will, but it would be better for you to clean it up. What am I saying? The Honorable Minister said you have to find people that mean well to the cause of a bigger idea, but we start small. So in 1973, if you think of the Nation of Islam after 40 plus years, at that point, I mean, whoa, them pictures that you just saw was in full effect. You talking over 20,000 acres of farmland at that time, going down into British Honduras, dealing with Georgia, Michigan, Alabama, right? Do you know somebody in the New York Times, Mr. Paul Delaney, came out and basically condemned the nation as a mom and pop shop establishment? So the Honorable Minister answered at that time, as Minister of Mosque number 7 and National Representative, what immigrant community that now prides itself as Americans did not start with immigration, number one, and we're not immigrants. We had to migrate and do what we're doing, seeking to get a better life. But he said, what Italians didn't start with mom and pop? The Jews started mom and pop. They started with their little carts. They started here and there, and then they begin to pool their resources into the fine establishments that you see. So I'm saying to the listeners, though we may see a bigger picture in view, we must start where we are with like people, like Dr. Brown, like Pastor Marvin, like the We, Our, Us movement. We're from different spaces, but the reality is we see the bigger picture, so we're willing to work together towards that. So I would just offer that you got to start with those that seem like they're willing. Don't you waste your time with them naysayers and telling you, man, we can't plant no food in the inner city. We can't have no damn freedom school during the midst of COVID-19. Hey, our University of Islam school started in the upstairs of a theater, got arrested for it, got abused for it, got our children snatched. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad didn't stop. Then it went to the homes around pot-belly stoves. Then we got our little nice buildings in a bigger building and spread from 1 or 2 schools to 46 of them. So I'm saying all of it is possible if we're willing to get busy and do the work.
So let me throw this one at you, Dr. Brown, because, you know, I'm looking at my church sitting in a neighborhood that I love where I was literally reared in. And it's a building, it's a huge building that has a lot of space in it. And my thoughts always wander off to how much more could be done. We in our community sometimes, well, we've come to a point now where it seems like the only thing that we own and turn the key to is the Black church. How many different opportunities do we have to build capacity for great work to be done in our community just with that one space?
I'm sorry. So I think that building off what our brother Minister Carlos just shared, this idea of a nation within a nation is a very powerful one. And as I shared, it helps to shape and direct my understanding. I am, like other communities, trying to position and offer my life in such a way that 6 or 7 generations from now, the ripple effect of what God has done through my life will still be felt. So with that long view in mind, what I'm striving to do is take this big vision and these powerful examples of the nation within a nation. And like Minister Carlos just said, starting with a small group around maybe 1 or 2 main initiatives and growing from there. The prophet Zechariah says in chapter 4, verse 10, despise not the days of small beginnings. So many of us are encouraged and inspired and want to run out and do the big thing. But I've learned that being faithful over a few things is what the Almighty first invites us to. And so in Exodus chapter 4, when God is having a conversation with Moses about him serving in such a way to free the Hebrews who were enslaved, Moses was concerned that his enslaved sisters and brothers would not believe him when he came back and said, God spoke to me.
That's right.
And when Moses says they won't believe me, there's this question in Exodus chapter 4, first 4 verses that grabs me, that God asked Moses a question. And the question God asked Moses was, what do you have in your hand? Stop there. Moses had a staff. And when he threw it on the ground, it transformed into a snake. You know the word. And then God tells Moses, now pick it up. And he grabbed it by the tail and it came back into a staff. That passage is so powerful to me because it speaks to what others would call asset-based community development. It would speak to utilizing what you already have at your disposal. And so let me give a very close example of this with Pleasant Hope. Pleasant Hope Baptist Church does mega ministry, but is not a mega building by no stretch of the imagination. We don't have thousands of members. In fact, on a good Sunday pre-corona, we would maybe look at 150 on a good Sunday.
Good.
Yeah, that's a good one, man. We packed out with 150.
That's right.
But check this out. When I was younger in ministry and I would see the mega ministries of Baltimore and I say, wow, one day I want to get like that. What I learned was you can have a big crowd, but it don't mean you making a big difference, because sometimes it's easier to hide in the big crowd. But when it's just me and 149 others, ain't no hiding.
Ain't no hiding.
Ain't no hiding. And so I'll say this, I'll shut down because I can talk about this all night. But I'll say what I looked at was what we had in our hand. We had 150 folk. We got a building that's paid off. We got a church van that's paid off. We got a close to commercial kitchen. We got a 1,500 square foot garden. We have multimedia. We got equipment to stream around the world. What else do you need to make a difference on your block?
Come on.
And so what I started to do, and this is just my growth, because I was not here when I started out in ministry 20 years ago. This was not my thinking. But when I grew and I hit my head up against the wall, but I grew to the place where I said, now, wait a minute. We own all of these assets. We got a strong group of people. We have a track record in this community. And outside of Sunday morning, Monday through Saturday, these assets sit unutilized or underutilized. Now, hold on, wait a minute. God blessed you with a whole commercial kitchen in that church. God blessed you with a whole building that's paid off. God bless you with a 15-passenger van and only intends for you to use it one day out of the week.
Come on.
How is it ministry when the blessings that God has given you are only unleashed in the community one day out of the whole week? I think it's a sin, Pastor Marvin.
Yeah.
I think it's a sin when you have churches that have assets and resources and have influence, and only one day out of the week do you extend it in service of God and to your people. I say Monday through Saturday should be just as active. Now check it out, Pastor Marvin. I don't have a staff of 25. That's why I had to have student minister Carlos Muhammad come over and try to work with us, with our men in particular, because in the church we talk about tithing money, but we don't talk as much about tithing your time. And if there's 168 hours, if there's 168 hours in a week, why aren't we saying to the members of our churches, hey, it's time for a tithe of your time? We need 17 hours a week. You need 2 hours, 2.5 hours a day need to be given. You give the white man all day long, 8 hours a day. And then after you get off of work, you come to church and give God what you got left. Oh no, the devil is a lie. I say this, the same way we tell our members to tithe off the top when your paycheck comes, we also should be saying you need to tithe your time in service to God, in service to your community, and don't let your people wait till after the white power structure is done taking your genius, but give your people and give your God the first of your strength. And we can, if we work together in that kind of way, I believe that all of our churches, Pastor Marvin, could be outposts and satellite locations for the liberation of our people. We just got to get out of this only Sunday morning, only 10 a.m., 11 a.m. mindset. We in ministry every day out the week.
So absolutely. Go ahead. I got to add to this, Pastor, because Dr. Brown is right on it. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about taking the spiritual word, the base, our faith. It's what we believe in the Almighty, and making it tangible. See, how long do we go preaching and have no tangible result? That's what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the minister was saying, not just to starting with the followers, but it's to show what we could all do in our spaces with the word. I'll leave you with this. It's not funny, but it's funny in the sense the way the minister tells the story, because when you look at, if you study the Nation of Islam's history, there came a time that we went through a great transition from the way the Honorable Elijah Muhammad did things and versus where his son, Imam W.D. Muhammad, or Wallace D. Muhammad at that time, saw he wanted to take the community. He felt that the community, rightly so in many ways, had begun to lack spiritual growth because it appeared that we were too busy with tangible progress. See? So his view was we needed to be deeper rooted in our spirituality. But guess what? You don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. See? So when the minister began to go through his personal transition where he felt, hey, man, I'm going back into show business. I'm going back into singing. And he said that in his home, there was a picture of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad at the bottom of the stairs. And he said every time he would go upstairs, he would look at the picture. And every time he would come back down, he would look at the picture. And he said he was in pain so much over 40 years of work, 20 specifically for himself, that it looked like the progress had gone down the drain. He said he'd look at that picture and talk to it, and be like, my messenger, you didn't leave me nothing. You didn't have no will. You didn't put nothing in there for me. I mean, I worked hard, right? And he said later, as he got the desire from God, the inspiration to rebuild, he came back down and looked at that picture and laughed and said, oh, dear messenger, you left me everything. You left me the word. So it's never to say that we don't we negate the word. It starts with the word, but does not the scripture say that the word has to become flesh and dwell among men? What does that mean to a believing community? That
It's gotta
means that
come to
after
life.
you are inspired and motivated by the word of God, yes, we come to service to get refueled. But what good is the refueling if we don't go out and make something out of it? Not only the church, hell, that's one of the arguments about just going to Friday prayer. It has to be more than that. It has to be more than prayer for yourself. It has to be more than fasting. You have to take those things as strengthening and now build it out even among non-Muslims or others that are not specifically in your faith tradition. None of us can say we're believers in God unless we want for our brothers and sisters what we want for ourselves. And so it's not just your congregation. It's not just your particular faith tradition. It is first in-house and then think for the whole.
So
I'm
this is
sorry,
what
Marvin.
no, this is what we here for. Because we talking about building. We are talking about building. And Dr. Brown, I gotta throw this at you, man, because y'all know I'm always going to try to put it into perspective. I am one generation removed from Carlton Pearson, T.D. Jakes, and all of these guys that made the pulpit look so glamorous that it seemed like all you had to do was have a word and some charisma, and that's what it took. And I see one of my little brothers on here, Pastor Rashad Singletary, right, who is 2 generations removed for that. So as we're looking at the current climate of the culture in church, one of my sisters is on here, Dr. Shavonna Whitehead. We know right now we kind of live in this space where people want a platform, they want an opportunity, they want to preach because we've seen celebrity and fame come from the preaching. Yet we have where we see the celebrity and the fame and the preaching, there's very little development, not even just outside of the church, but inside of the church. Men build monuments to themselves called mega churches in dying communities. Please talk to me about the need for us, because what you're talking about, if we take our mind away from the glamorizing of the pulpit and moving more to asset-based community development, as you said, that's a whole culture change at this point, because that's not the norm in faith culture. Or in our experience in faith culture.
Sure. I would say, I mean, and that's so on point, Pastor Marvin. I was influenced by some of the same persons you named, and so many more. And in some ways, some wonderful nuggets were deposited that helped me to think and to see and to analyze. And in other ways, the example that I was given through some of the quote unquote celebrity preachers, or those who were made to be celebrities, because I believe many preachers that have like a celebrity persona today didn't start out wanting that, but that ego, when that ego starts taking over, and that applause and all of that, it can be hard sometimes to overcome that, to see the bigger picture. But I will say that I began to ask myself questions when I continued deeper and deeper in the ministry. As I said earlier, this year I'll celebrate 20 years preaching as a preacher. And when I think about it and I look back over my 2 decades now in the preaching ministry, I wanted to be able to answer questions in the affirmative with respect to the difference that was being made in people's lives. And so when those questions started to bubble up, the things that I thought were important before, I started to, diminish that significance to a great degree. And I began to look and think about other things. So I'll add this to this thought as well, Pastor Marvin. I thought about form. I thought about form pointing to function. So what are we structuring and organizing our churches to do actually? And how can we structure our churches and as Minister Carlos's point, our faith-based organizations and communities more broadly concerned, how can we think about it with the end goal in mind and then reverse engineer the structuring of our faith-based organizations to achieve that end? right? How do we what does the picture of an effective liberatory church in your community look like, Pastor Marvin? Paint that picture, write it out in detail, write the vision, make it plain, and then reverse engineer the vision and say, okay, if that is to be, here is how the church could and should be structured to achieve that end. And many times I believe that those of us who are called, especially to establish churches, we step into an environment where the tradition is so set and cemented that it is hard to be imaginative and innovative with restructuring the church. It takes a long time, and you ain't got time tonight for me to tell all the bumps I took upside the head as a 28-year-old pastor stepping into the pulpit of Pleasant Hope, thinking that on charisma and passion alone, I was about to transform this 70-some-year-old church overnight. Yeah, right. But through relationship building, through strategy, and through recognizing that the calling of God upon my life was not so tied to the building and Pleasant Hope that I couldn't do anything beyond that building. It was a pivotal moment for me when I said, wait a minute, I'm not just their pastor. That is a part of who I am. But I'm also called of God for a ministry that can't fit inside that brick building. And I don't have time, as Minister Carlos said, to wait for 100% unanimous agreement to get behind this ministry of building and organizing in the community. But as my dad, Bishop Heber Brown II, would say, you go with the goers. Don't waste energy on those who ain't trying to go. Share the vision, plant seeds, encourage, and love the best way you can. But if they ain't ready to go, it'd be like dragging a mule. So instead of spending your energy there, roll with the people who are ready to roll. And I bear witness that if God gives you vision for your people and a heart to serve, God will also send others to come alongside to walk with you in that journey. And so I would say that if nothing else, to every pastor in particular that's watching, think about what the end goal and then back up from there. What does your community need? What would your community miss if your church wasn't there? What does your preaching do outside of the experience of a Hammond B3 organ, tambourines, and claps on 2 and 4?
Wow.
And what does the power of the Holy Spirit look like in that Pentecostal experience in Acts chapter 2? Because some people, Lord, Minister Carlos gets me excited. Y'all blame him because I get excited when I get my brother. But in Acts chapter 2, when the Holy Spirit fell upon the people, too many in the church, Pastor Marvin, just think about the disciples speaking in different languages, and they stop there. Keep reading. Because near the end of Acts chapter 2, the Holy Spirit of the Almighty God also moved the people to develop a spiritual susu. They put their money together, cooperative economics. They put their money together, and they made sure that the needs of everybody in the community was met. And it wasn't private ownership to the extent of hoarding at the expense of others. But it was, I'm going to be so reliant on the power of God through this community that I am willing to put my resources in a shared and common pot. And whatever need there is, we're going to achieve it. I saw in the spirit in that passage that the believers eradicated poverty because the Spirit of God moved. The believers eradicated sickness because the Spirit of God moved upon the hearts of the people. I'm just looking at them speaking in different languages. I'm looking at what they did with their money, with their time, with their houses. That was evidence that the Spirit was moving, not just because you said he tied my yellow bow tie. No, did you open your wallet? Did you put your energy? Did you put your time for the greater whole? And that's where I saw evidence. I would just say to every pastor, now our dear brother, Pastor Burston, he is such a deep thinker himself, and I love the program that he has, but I love his question here about churches, how suggesting.
Can we get that up, shot?
Yeah, how do you suggest?
Play Burston's question back up.
overcome the economic deficit that almost 90% of them operate from. Not only are the members bivocational, you're right, Pastor, many of the pastors are bivocational. There isn't much time or resources to operate from. What you guys are discussing requires a lot of volunteer time and resources that most inner city churches don't have. The reality of our church living Sunday to Sunday. So on point, so on point. And Pastor, absolutely, yes, I'm with you and I feel you. I would offer up this thought. When we are thinking on the magnitude of nation building, no one church, no one mosque can achieve that by themselves because of all of the very real factors that you just raised and lifted up. So if we are thinking about this in the way of how do I do it with one church by itself, I'm with you. It's overwhelming and it feels like it's impossible. But I have drawn strength from pushing back against this Western individualistic, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps thinking. Okay, how do we work together? So in the spirit of a nation, I'll shut down here because the Minister Carlos is brimming with wisdom. We got to hear it.
No, you go on, bro. Hit it.
In the spirit of nation building, in the spirit of thinking about, we always talk about the kingdom of God, right? Well, every kingdom I've ever studied has different departments, different areas, different assignments, and it was structured in such a way that benefited the whole. Pleasant Hope Baptist Church all by itself cannot fulfill the full picture of what a nation looks like for our black brothers, our black community, our sisters and brothers. But so what I did was I did an assessment of what made the most sense in terms of our church's contribution to a black nation. So for us, it made sense to take lead with food sovereignty for the black community. I got a bunch of members from North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, grew up on farms. They know about it. So it made sense for us to do that. So that's one lane that we started in. And then another lane is education. We have a lot of teachers and educators. And so the Freedom School that we run also came after an assessment of the gifts and the skills in the house. Don't ask Pleasant Hope to run security and public safety. Call Minister Carlos and FOI for that. Right? So when you're thinking in that way, your church, they got to do everything. And that freed me up as well, Pastor Marvin. I can't and don't have to do everything. God has soldiers everywhere. I just got to be faithful over what the God is calling me to do. And as the Almighty calls me to put my hand to the plow with food sovereignty, I'm going to make sure we can eat as a people. I'm going to do everything I can to connect the dots. I'm giving my life to that, y'all. I'm giving my life to that, to connecting churches, farmers, mosques, organizations, so that when you lower the flesh down into the soil, I pray that generations from now, the connections made during my lifetime will give our descendants a running start to continue to feed themselves. So for Pastor Burston and for every other pastor, I'm fully sensitive to the fact, Lord knows the weight on our shoulders is heavy, as is for Minister Carlos and so many others, especially in a pandemic. But I think we will burn out if we believe that we by ourselves got to do everything. We ain't got to do everything. What is the thing that God is calling? What is in your hand? Go back to Exodus 4. What's in my hand might be different than what's in Pastor Marvin's hand, but that's my brother. And so what's in my hand helps him, and what's in his hand helps me. And if we link up together, you can't tell me that just all the Baptist churches alone in Baltimore can't turn this thing around. You can't tell me that the AME churches can't get together and say, you know what? We're going to transform, whether it's food or health or public safety or education, we're going to transform it. Will it happen overnight? Not at all. But when we are thinking and organizing for 7 generations from now, and we're not running a 40-yard dash, but we're running a marathon, knowing that we will not see the totality in our physical form and lifetime, then we just do the work and we connect up and we link it. And I got 2 sons, and my sons and my children will link up with your children and keep my sons will not have to go find themselves. They won't have to go travel the world and investigate what they can do and no, their daddy is working hard to lay down our part of the system for our people. and pouring my knowledge into them, they know how to grow black beans. They know how to grow tomatoes. They're learning how. And this is my offering to my community, not just this work around food sovereignty and education, but also these children who will grow and continue this work beyond my lifetime. I got to shut down.
Man, bruh. Go ahead, Ma, because
let me pose the question. No, because while he was talking, my mind was shifted to one of the monikers that always went along with the Nation of Islam, and that is do for self, right? Do for self, the ability to build self-sufficiency as a people, as a person, then greater as a people, and of course as a community. I mean, as a person, as a community, and as a people at large, right? And here we find ourselves where gentrification and so many other things are hitting our communities, and redlining and other things where we're so disempowered has impacted the places where our people predominantly are in cities like Baltimore. How important is it that we revive the do for self mind frame in the sense of its ability to not, because I'm a person that tell people all the time, I don't believe in independence. I don't believe in independence. First of all, I'm dependent upon God just to live. I'm dependent upon my brethren as a young pastor in Baltimore to learn how to work with our people, lead our people. So I don't believe in it, but I do believe in self-sufficiency. I believe that I should be able to do for self. Talk to me about do for self. And where did we lose that, Minister Carlos?
Well, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad made that statement, and he wasn't speaking in a vacuum, and there was something on the tail end of that. But the first teaching is that the first law of nature is self-preservation. When we look at creation, God is showing us that the bird, whatever species it is that relies on the worm, don't concern itself with whether or not the worm want to be eaten. God put it there to be eaten, but at the same time, we got more worms, right? So my point is, us as the best of God's creation, the human being, but the worst at the same time when we're rebelling against God, has the wherewithal to practice that we must do for ourselves. So the tail end of the statement that sometimes is missing is we must do something for self or suffer the consequences. And are we suffering the consequences? Yes, brother is showing our Georgia farm in operation right now. It's just a start. But it's to what you said. We got to do something for self. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, as I said on our last show, talked about a vision on the Michigan farm with empty silos, and that he wanted to fill those silos up with grain and rice and beans for when famine strike, so that the believers could eat. Do you know the Honorable Elijah Muhammad used to make statements and people would say, he's a black supremacist. He just talking. Nah, he was never just talking. Whatever he said, he intended to do. And guess what? He said he didn't care how bad it got. As far as for me and my followers, we will eat. Now that sounds very bold, but Pastor just hit it. That's what he was really saying, that we got to do something. Otherwise, we're going to suffer. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad wasn't saying it to brag. He's saying we're working to prevent a scenario that most, if famine strikes, we don't know how to fast. So you'll be looking at your babies to want to eat them because you're so used to eating 3 and 4 and 5 times a day in the name of being healthy, when it's proven the more we eat and what we're eating is killing us and taking us to an early grave. And thus, unless we can get our mouths out of white people's kitchen, then we will suffer. So the Honorable Minister made that vision flesh about them silos. That was in 2006. He wanted to fill them up with Navy beans. They're filled now. And so when the pandemic struck, this is just a mason jar full of these beautiful Navy beans that we hate because we want steaks and lobsters and shrimps and crabs. But guess what? You can't get to it now. But that little Navy bean, see, it's so full of certain nutrients that it can withstand radiation. What am I saying?
Talk,
the honorable minister sent bags, 25, 50-pound bags of Navy beans, first to every sister that was single with children or single, and then to brothers that did not have, they were at home by themselves, and then to families, so that at least we could have something to hold us over, just in case we couldn't get to the store. I close with this about doing for self, based upon what Dr. Brown was saying. Do you know that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan in the year 2000, in the 5th anniversary of the Million Man March, after criticism, what did the march do? It didn't do nothing. You just brought people together with no agenda. That's a lie. Do you know the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said that we are on a death march? Our people are on a death march going backwards into the ovens of social deterioration. That anything that Black leadership and good people had tried to build, we were at risk of losing with our generation. And so he said that it can no longer be a solo, that no organization, no mosque, no church has a monopoly on the survival of the Black nation. It's going to take us all. And do you know what came out of that? It's what Pastor Brown said. The minister knew that we had talent in the nation, and we're going to use that. But guess what? We got Black mayors, Black educators, Black police chiefs, Black this, Black that, all over the country. We don't care what religion you belong to. We need to come together. And out of that came an agenda. There it is. Now, it is dated from 2000 to 2008. The national agenda, public policy, issues, analysis, and programmatic plan of action. Guess who worked on this? The Black caucus, the Black educators, the Black lawyers, the Black people that work in the prison industrial complex to change that reality, the Black farmers. See, the spiritual, the pastors, the imams, the ministers, all worked on this. And do you know that what's in here is still good? Maybe we definitely got to update the stat, but the blueprint is in this book, and I'll make sure that you both get some copies of this. What is my point in that? Out of this came 9 ministries. First being the spiritual, right? Then you got agriculture, education, information, health, trade and commerce, defense, justice, arts and culture, and science and technology. So those 9 are around the one spiritual, because one God, right? And everything is revolving around that one sun. I don't care what their scientists say. 9 planets around that one sun, not arguing with each other, not worrying about each other's size. One brain, 9 major systems that function with it. That's why Paul talked about the body, the structure of the body, and how this limb or that part can't be arguing with this one. It all has to work in concert together. That's doing for self. I'll leave you with a story and let it go, because Pastor Brown is we in the mix together in this. Man, during the Freddie Gray uprising, before that big situation, we were already out in the street. We were already at the police station. And momentum was building as a result of hearing that he had died and had succumbed to those wounds and really murdered. And Pastor Brown had a concern about an upcoming protest and an individual that could kind of incite some things based upon the coalition that was local. And he came to me and he said, Minister, I don't feel good about that, because he know I got a relationship with that brother. he said the direction that what we're trying to do this and go this route. I said, Pastor, don't worry about that. I'm together with you. See, what was that? Was that a diss on the brother? No. What it was is we got a relationship. And the relationship and what my brother was trying to do was not against what I stand for and principle. So my loyalty and my word to my brother means more than somebody that could get the national or trying to get national attention. So I wanted to ensure my brother, oh no, brother, we'll be fine. We're going to continue to go on with the plan we had in operation, and we were successful. I'm saying that to those that are listening because Pastor talked about ego. Ego. Nah, man, Dr. Bundy's right. Edging God out. You edge God out, we don't have nothing to stand on. So getting back to doing for self, we better do something for ourselves or suffer the consequences. Lastly, Pastor Marvin, is that not what we, our, us is?
So I'm glad you would give me that segue, Minister, because I wanted to bring this story in, right? And this is a real story. I was talking to a man of God who is a pastor, and he was telling me that he was a little worried because he has a young man whose family is more a part of the church than the young man, falling on hard times, right? And the young man had pretty much relegated himself to the need to go grab some weight, and y'all know what I'm talking about, and hit the block before he would let his family starve. And the pastor said to him, I don't know what to tell him, right? And in that space, when we go back to the what do you have in your hands conversation, I don't know how to plant and grow things. I'm hoping that I can learn some of that. I've been in Dr. Brown's inbox for years now, trying to get a class or something, right? I don't have, as a young pastor, 18 months in, I don't have an army of men, right? But the Bible says the wealth of the wicked is stored up for the righteous. I don't believe that means that a millionaire drug dealer is going to walk into my church, but the world or the secular realm has taught me how to build relationships, and that same person in my hands, with what's in my hands, does not have to go to the block because I can get him a job. That pushes me to what I want y'all to talk about. How important is it as we move away from the concept of independence, embrace the concept of self-sufficiency, that we have the necessary relationships in the marketplace, in the civic areas with politicians and things of that nature, that we can really get some things done. I'm going to say it, and I'm going to say it loud. I'm going to say it with a godly proud, and say it loud and say it godly proud. If a brother comes to me and he's falling on hard times under any circumstances, the last thing he's got to worry about if he comes to me is a job. If I can't do nothing else, I can get you connected to some employment. I don't care how many times you've been to jail, what you went to jail for, what any of those circumstances are, right? How do we move ourselves as faith leaders, or what do we put in place as faith? What all do we need to put in place as faith leaders to be totally effective, or effective in the totality of the spectrum, with the relationships in the marketplace and the relationships with the civic social area with politicians and things of that nature?
Well, let me say this real quick. I'm giving it right to Pastor. That part about that brother that want to go sell weight to take care of his family, I'm going to deal with the part that says it like this. That's where the minister got most of us from, that type of thinking. So in that scripture, the Bible and the Quran, and what God revealed, is enough power in that word. It's just the approach and how do you do it. None of us that really sold drugs really wanted to do that. Not really, right? But somebody came and spoke to our soul. And once the soul was hit, then knowledge was given to show me why I didn't have to do that. But guess what? The honorable minister showed us, hey, you ain't got to lose that entrepreneurial spirit and principle. You just got to do something right. And I think we have that collectively, even with these three brothers that are here now, and can extend out to that. So I would just offer to our listeners, don't judge our young brothers out there. Many, I came from that. But I came from it and have not looked back to that. So I owe that generation that I helped destroy to come out of that reality. Sometimes it's not just Bible or Quran. It's just some downright love, straight up love. I love you, brother. Come on and walk with me. Come walk down the block with me. And after a while, he don't want to hang on the corner. He want to walk with you. Hey, Pastor, where you going? I thought you going up there with them brothers again. You going out to give out food? I want to be there. So that's just some tangible inspiration that I can see. Malcolm X's story is great because many of us can relate to it. That's why we can say we are Malcolm X. You can't get no deeper than that. And there's so many other testimonies in both the mosque and the church of brothers that come from that lifestyle, go to prison, and we're not just mosque and church filled up with ex-convicts, but that's what the X was standing for as well. But the reality is, guess what? In the church and the mosque, you could have the ex-gangster and the brother that went to college and the brother that went to med school and the sister that used to prostitute, right? All in there together. And guess what? You wouldn't know it because we so in love with God and so in love with each other, we would never make the judgment that because you come from this walk or that walk, mine mean more than yours or your means more than mine. No, God called us all in here together by one covenant to do some work. Now we got to get busy and do something for self or suffer the consequences.
So let me shift it back to you, Dr. Brown. The necessity to have those relationships in the marketplace and others to be able to be the connector. One of the core values of the We Are Us movement is that we be connectors and align ourselves with the needs of the people, with the people, even if we don't have it in-house, with the people that can help us facilitate seeing the needs of the people met. How important is it to do that relationship building and have access to those things?
Well, yeah, I think it's absolutely important to have those relationships. And it's also important. You said something a little earlier. I would say that you have a massive ministry, Pastor Marvin. Right. You have a massive group of sisters and brothers who are at your shoulder, at your side. 18 months in, you have a running start that many others would be quite envious of because of the relationships that you have invested in. And, you know, cultivating those relationships is important. And I'll also say one of the viewers wrote the word focus. He said, I grow food, but I've been more successful because I've focused. And I think one of the things that I've realized and learned and continuing to learn in my life is that the more focused I am, the easier it is for you to know what to call me for. The more focused I am, the more disciplined I am. Once I've gained clarity around what the Almighty has called me to, then I beat that drum every day. Everybody in the city of Baltimore know when it comes to farming. Oh, Heber Brown. Matter of fact, somebody a couple weeks ago was talking to one of the members of the church, and they said, "Yeah, I go to Pleasant Hope." And the person said, "Oh, you talking about that farming pastor? This is somebody I've never met before." But it is focus, and it is being consistent in that vein and in that lane that people ultimately know what to call you for. And so, you know, I know, Pastor Marvin, if somebody comes to me and they're in need of a job, sure, I have members of our church that are in those positions, but I also have your number and information. And because of your consistent passion and the integrity with which you show up in that space, I feel comfortable and confident to call you and say, if nobody else can figure this out, Pastor Marvin is going to figure this out. And so just because I have your number in my phone, I am a wealthy, I am doing good. Just because I can reach out to Minister Carlos, and if there's a need, I mean, we really need to come back and do another show on the uprising and tell our, we talked about this, we got to tell the version of the events that are not being told in the Baltimore Sun.
Woo!
And that did not show up hours later with our brothers and sisters of the faith who came to sing and march, and that was beautiful, and I'm grateful. But we were there just a little earlier. There's another whole story there.
Pictures, right?
Yeah.
Illustrated. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think that, I'll close on this. Just knowing, being consistent, being disciplined, cultivating your relationships well. Listen, we all stumble, we all make mistakes, and even in that way, going to amend that as soon as you can. Listen, I have fallen, I've stumbled, I felt some kind of way, I was insecure about this or that, and just mending that. I believe that people honor honesty more than perfection.
That's right.
I'm going to be honest. I want to be full of integrity. All of those things that help to nurture and to shape relationship building. And I'd love to see, and I'm gonna do everything I can to see more of that in the faith leaders of the city of Baltimore, so that really, when you talk about the politics, Pastor Marvin, just through working with Brother Adam and Davon and the leaders of Beautiful Struggle and that family, and going down to Annapolis, I have learned you don't go down there unprepared. Don't ask for a meeting with the commissioner. You ain't got nothing to say. And you're not organized amongst your own people. You got to organize because you're sitting down with those who have a certain degree of power in this realm and in their way. And you got to show up with some organized power of yourself, with yourself. And so I would just say relationship is not just nice, good, not just important in the individual level. I would dare say that relationship building and networking, as we're talking about tonight, is supremely important and a necessity of the nation building that we've been talking about as well. How do we connect with brothers and sisters we have not seen when you don't connect with the brothers and sisters you see all the time? How do you love a God that you can't see and you don't love the brothers and the sisters that are right there on your block and in your city? And so
I'm a stickler when it comes down to the international global ministry that people like to put on their sign, international global ministry, and you don't have anything that works in the community that you're in. I'm a stickler for that.
Yeah, I would say this though, Marvin. Dr. Brown, Pastor Brown hit it. Listen, brother, think of our relationships. And if it's, I'm pleased to the listener, I'm not bragging. I'm just giving an example of what can happen when you have as Dr. King said, a church or a ministry without walls. If the three of us right now went down to Penn North, no matter what's going on out there, guess what? We would be okay.
Absolutely.
Guess what? I'm serious. And that's not taking the FOI. That's not literally, that's like going down there, because guess what's going to happen? Whoever's out there doing whatever they doing, they going to say, oh man, the brothers, pastor, Marv, Carlo, bro, minister, hey, chill with that. What's up with y'all? What's y'all all right? See, and so my point is, when we were at the jail, right? That's the point, right? That we can walk in any community right now, and all the little soldiers that was incarcerated, even though they might have went back to the street, they see hope in us. That's why it can happen. Look, my wife's car broke down on Federal Street on a hot day last year, right? Just wouldn't stop. So I just happened to be home. One of them days I was in a position to go. Now she's sitting there with my daughter, and she's been on the cast the whole time. And when she told me where she was at, I was like, oh my God, let me get over here, right? So I said, so I'm telling it, is it just sitting? So you need to park, you need to back it up and make sure it's parked right. So I get over there, and man, I get out the car, and two little soldiers from the jail. They like, bro, Muhammad, what's up? I'm like, man, I'm over here, man. That's my family right here. That car broke down. They, oh, man, we seen that. It was like, nah, they good, man. Because we was going to have to leave the car. And I said, look, I got to leave the car here. We're going to send somebody to come get it. They like, bro, Muhammad, don't worry about it. That joint good. Ain't nobody touching that. So that's God's hand, right? That's God's hand. And I've seen that with you, Pastor Brown. I've seen it with you, Mob, in terms of people that normally the world would judge, and the Negroes would judge too. They're not good enough until they become exactly like us, quote unquote. But the reality is we've touched souls. My teacher told me one time, speaking about a situation, he said, look, in ministry, this ain't about winning arguments more than it is about touching souls. He said, because you could win the argument, your little Punic argument, and lose the soul. So it's better to win the soul so that we could go out among the junkies, the prostitutes, the pimps, the cutthroats, all of the things that many of our members used to be. We can go among them and they know. I don't care what nobody say about them brothers, that group right there, them people right there. They love us and our hope is in them. I remember a brother telling me straight up, Marvin. He said, hey, bro, Muhammad, don't ever stop doing what you're doing. Because he sensed something in me one day out in the street. He said, nah, bro, don't stop doing what you're doing. Because really, all of us want to be where you are. We know that. We know that when we're ready, that's the place we come to. Just keep praying for us. I said, yes, sir. And God knew I needed that. So, brother, don't ever think, not that you think it, I'm just saying, we got some of the biggest ministries there is. We got the people. Look at the Million Man March. What church was that? What mosque was that? What synagogue was that? What denomination was it? Ah, something to look at, ain't it? That's God's hand. God's miracle did that. Well, I'll let that go with that, bro.
Man, listen, I want to thank y'all, and Dr. Brown said it. This panel right here, this Building a Nation panel, I believe is one where we got so many things that we can hit. We will be reconvening. This time we had the opportunity to do it back-to-back 2 weeks. We won't be back next week with this panel, but you will see these brothers again. And if it's okay with y'all, man, I want to keep y'all two together for specific conversations like this, because I love the dialogue, I love the flow, and I see as I read the comments where people are getting solutions, and we got so much more that we'll be able to unpack as we continue to touch on things that impact our community and positioning for Black leaders in our community, whether they're the faith leader, whether they're the community leader, whatever lane that they would particularly run in. So if it's okay with y'all, man, I want to be able to do this again and do it some more. I tell you, the Chop Shop is about fresh information, not particularly a new guest every time you see us. It's about bringing relevant and tangible information. And tonight's show has been phenomenal. So I want to talk about Thursday's show. Then I'm going to come back. We're going to have some final thoughts and some final thank yous, and we're going to be out of here. So coming up this week on Thursday, we're going to be talking to one of my favorite guys, and he has already promised that because he's no longer in the seats that he's held and become known for, that he's going to come on and he's going to talk his talk. He said he is excited to be free from the establishment so he can come on and tell it like it is. We will be one-on-one with former federal judge and the former city solicitor for Baltimore, Judge Andre Davis. He's going to sit down with us, man, and he has told me that there are no restrictions. We're going to touch it all. We're going to talk policing in America. We're going to talk Baltimore's own consent decree. We're going to talk, and listen, he's already said he got some things that he wish he could go back and do over in his time as our city solicitor, and he's promised that this is going to be a no-holds-barred conversation. He was a city solicitor under Mayor Pugh, so we're going to talk about political corruption. We're going to talk about the incoming of the new administration. Man, I'm excited. So you want to make sure that you're here with us on Thursday as we have this dialogue with the honorable former retired federal judge, and he's forever called Judge Andre Davis, and former Baltimore City Solicitor. Dr. Brown, final thoughts?
Yeah, I just got a heart for especially those in ministry or those who are trying to organize your ministry, your church in a way that honors God and serves your community. I'm thinking back to where I was at 28 years old and younger, trying to figure out that for myself. So for anybody who is studying, open, learning, reaching, and hungry for something that you don't quite see in front of you, I just offer up a few names for your consideration. Please study the ministry of Reverend Vernon Dobson. Study the ministry of Reverend Marion Bascom. Study the Goon Squad in Baltimore. This information is out there. I'm sharing it. I share information again. I said it last time. Reverend Albert Clegg. There's a blueprint inside of this book, y'all, to every Christian pastor who's trying to figure out how to structure your church for power in the Black community. Reverend Albert B. Clegg Jr. has a whole blueprint inside this book, Black Christian Nationalism, New Directions for the Black Church. Get the book. Get it from Baba Nat T at everyone's place. Go investigate it. I'm just saying you don't have to start from scratch. We stand on brilliant shoulders of those who've done this work. Study Father Divine in the Great Depression. I'm writing my first book, and I'm studying the Peace Mission movement and looking at what they did with respect to food and farming. Study Reverend Clegg, of course, and many others. And I'll also say, you talked about our great new ancestor and Congressman John Lewis. And also you mentioned Reverend C.T. Vivian. I'll say finally, we lost another soldier, not lost, we gained another ancestor as well in a dynamic sister named Emma Sanders, that she was a member of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party alongside Sister Fannie Lou Hamer, Sister Victoria Jackson Gray Adams, Sister Ella Baker. The historian and Minister Carlos inspires me, because when you dig into that history, you can find some gems and some tools and some insight and inspiration that can help you position yourself today as well. So to every pastor, and finally, let me say, every pastor who's trying to do this work, you are one limb in the kingdom. Your church by itself will not make up the kingdom. Minister Carlos said it, talked about the writings of Paul, and he talked about the different parts of the body. We preach about it all the time, but we think sometimes that the whole body is going to be made up of your congregation. What if Present Hope is just the pinky? But that's all right, because if Pastor Marvin's cross town, he's the next finger. Minister Carlos is cross town, he's the next finger. And so instead of trying to think about our churches and even our own pastorate as if we got to be all and do all, do an asset, do a skills bank in your own congregation. Assess and evaluate what gifts are there. And that will, I believe, that data combined with that discernment will give us some insight as to which limb of the body that God is calling us to be in community and communion with the rest of our sisters and brothers. Thank you all so much for the opportunity.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. We're going to come to you now, Minister Carlos, for final thoughts.
Hey, my brothers, it has been a great pleasure. I'm inspired. I'm motivated. Again, I'm in my chamber. I wanted to say from the outset, I know y'all looked at me with a suit and tie on. It is because, and listen, I would have loved to have my t-shirt and hat on today, but I had some other official stuff that I was doing. And then after I get off of here, I got another Zoom that requires, quote unquote, this kind of attire. But you know, we like the newscasters, you know, it's all top heavy. Yeah, I'm transparent. We're gonna keep it 100. But I want to say, man, I'm inspired. I love my brothers. I love your audience. Thank you all for tuning in. And remember what Dr. Brown, Pastor Brown just said, you know, we all have a part to play. And each part is significant. But the moment that you start thinking somebody else's part is yours, then we could risk losing the whole. The honorable minister said something to me one day as he was talking about his operations, and one of his doctors had passed away, and he spoke at the service along with our sister from Radio 1, Kathy Hughes, also was one of the speakers. And the minister said something very, very beautiful. He said, see, when you love somebody and somebody is close to you and somebody is instrumental in your life, and this goes for all of the greats that Pastor just mentioned and your own family members, it's just an example of a jewel of wisdom. He said, go to a hospital where you have amputees. He said, because when you talk to them, they survived, but they'll tell you things like, you know, I find myself trying to lift my arm because it still feels like it's there. And the minister said, because God put it there for a reason. And so even after it's cut away, it still feels like it's there because it was such an essential part of you. So when you lose the tip of a finger, look at the adjustment that has to be made just from the tip being lost. So we can't afford to lose progress and what we're moving towards because of ego, because you put us in a position of losing something instrumental that didn't have to be lost in the spiritual sense or in the tangible sense, like a limb, because you're supposed to be there and play the part that you're supposed to play. I'm there to play the part that I'm supposed to play. And it's so beautiful, for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that our unity would solve 95% of our problems, and that our unity is more powerful than a hydrogen bomb. I have a challenge though, Marv, and I gotta bring Pastor Brown on this. I got a challenge. I mean, we do need a wee hour us garden, don't we? I mean, really. We've been feeding from other people's gardens, and that's fine. We're doing what we're doing, right? We're feeding the community with the produce. But some of us in the movement gotta take some time out to go get them hands dirty and learn.
That's the key.
And have a wee hour us garden, because how powerful is it when we start walking and that truck is following behind us in harvest time, and the people saying, what, you got a good word for us? Yep. And we got some food.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I look forward to it, man. Love y'all so much. Thank you so much.
Man, let me tell you, Minister Carlos, you said that, and Dr. Brown, and you know, I told God, I said, I'm going to get a t-shirt made. It's going to say God, and underneath of it, the hashtag, I'm here for all of it. I believe God is doing some revolutionary things in the earth right now. And while some people, again, have failed to look for and to see opportunity in this time of what's been dubbed a pandemic and all of these transitional spaces that we see as ancestors in politics and in the faith community, and others are transitioning on into that, from labor into reward. We've got to be mindful that this is divine. And I always like to leave us with something inspirational. And the 17th chapter of Genesis says this: and when Abram was 99 years and 9 years old, the Lord appeared to him and said unto him, I am the Almighty God, walk before me and be thou upright. And I will make my covenant between me and thee, and I will multiply thee exceedingly. And then he says, and it says, and Abram fell on his face, and God talked with him, saying, and this is the words that I want us to focus in on. As for me, comma, behold, comma, my covenant is with thee, comma, and thou shalt be a father of many nations. Neither shall thy name be called Abram, but thy name shall be Abraham. For a father of many nations I have made thee. I want to just say this to us tonight. What you see on here is relationship, relationship, and relationship. We can't talk about community building without relationships. Sister Tracy, I'm going to make sure you get that shirt. We can't talk about anything to do with it, and to understand that at the core of it, God, over the last 5 years, with some resistance from those that have come before us, have pushed us to a space where those who were so staunch that they couldn't take seeing the so-called Muslim and the so-called Christian together. He has done what was necessary to reunite the brothers Ishmael and Isaac, to make sure that his promise to Abraham, that he is, not would be, but that he is the father of many nations, and that unification amongst the brethren is what we needed to see before we could see the healing in our community. Many people preach, if my people who are called by my name would humble themselves and pray, seek my face, turn from their wicked ways, then I'll hear from heaven, I'll forgive their sin and heal their land. I want you to understand that healing is first amongst the brethren, all of us who are of the seed of Abraham and the lineage, whether it's the one who's the lineage of Ishmael, or whether you're in the line of Isaac. We are all one community, and our black skin has been terrorized in this country long enough. But I'm grateful because he told our ancestor Moses, the enemy that you see today, you will never see again. And as we see this transitional time that's taking place, as this country's census has been alerted to race in a way that it never has before, and you see great things happening, major corporations who's hid behind their money, having no other recourse but to make the changes that have been demanded. The unification of the brethren, the unification of us as a people, is forcing the hand of the enemy to unleash his hold on God's true people. I thank God for you, brothers. You guys are my big brothers, my forerunners, great leaders who I look up to and I respect. And I want to say this humbly, those who I aspire to be like. And I thank you, Dr. Heber Brown, for your example, for the things that I can go online and read up on. And I'm gonna get that class out you. We gonna get together. I'm gonna get it out you. And to Minister Carlos, who has taken me before anybody knew my name. In 2015, I was had been serving and working for years, but nobody knew my name, and it didn't matter if anybody knew my name. He saw the inner strength in the heart of God, and he embraced it, and down through the years has been a major contributor to my cultivation and development, that I'll even go back to say, when I had what many dubbed as a moment of shame, as a member of a board, sitting in a seat appointed by the mayor, and having a viral video go out. Minister Carlos, while no pastors did, reached out to me and said, listen, if you want to have a press conference, tell your side, speak your piece, I will have the brethren right there to stand with you because we love you. So I want you to know, brother, it's likewise that I love you, and I'm just grateful that God would put me right in the front seat of the vehicle that he used to reunite the brothers Ishmael and Isaac and make it about being black first, make it about being community, and to some degree make it about our unity and love for Baltimore ahead of anything. I want to thank our listening audience tonight. We had some people really ride out with us. Shock, I need you to bring some of those brothers back down because I want to call them out by name. We had brother T Mall X. We had another brother was on there that was
LeVar,
with us all night.
LeVar,
brother. I thank you, brother. This ain't the platform where we always gonna agree, but we value everybody's opinion. I see my man Aunt Pete in the building. My brother, my friend, the doctor, the professor, Sister Tracy has rode out with us all night. We have
shout out Sister Tracy.
Shout out Sister Tracy.
Shout out Sister Tracy.
Huh?
Shout out Sister Tracy.
Yeah.
Family.
Kim Randall is on with us. We had so many on with us earlier. We thank you because we always say if a tree falls in the woods and nobody's around to hear it, does it make a sound? What's the point? The point is you ain't got to be here to listen to us because we want to go live and talk about some things that we think are relevant, some things that we think that matter. So we value our audience. Please continue to ride with us. We hope to see you on Thursday. We are grateful for God giving us this opportunity, and we're going to always treat it as though it's a God-given privilege to be able to come and talk to y'all. Shot, I thank you, my brother.
Thank you,
You always keep it rolling. You keep it working. You the man. You stay off the camera. But I'm starting to hear you more and more, brother, jumping in the dialogue.
They was moving me today, man. I had to let them know. They was talking today, man. They was talking.
Yeah.
So I had to let them know, like, I'm here.
Man, my guy Steve Harris jumped in. And with all that being said, Shock, there's only one thing left to say, man. KS, take me home.
I can be more. There's nothing that I can't achieve if I just believe. You can be more. You can make every dream a reality. We can be more. Be more, be more.
Yeah.
I can be more.
I wake up every day and try to be more. I pray I be more. It's easy to achieve anything you believe. Like hold your head high. Girl, you got a reason to breathe. I see it around mine. Boy, you got a reason to dream. Let's take flight. Get the children a reason to see redemption. We grow up in the checks where it's evil and wicked. Where the people with success don't want to send you a visit. But we still finna make this life worth living. Now throw your hands to the sky if you feel it. Hey, throw your hands to the sky if you the realest. You got a vision. Let's put them pistols away and make sure the OGs keep the community safe. In the world where the ladies crying, the babies dying, I think we can create that space to make a way for the ladies to ride and make baby giants. Be more, believe, let's play. I'm so in love with life.
There's nothing that I can't achieve if I just believe. You can be more. You can make every dream a reality. We can be